Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm your host, Nathaniel. I'm so pleased to have a special guest with us today, Jason Fernandez, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Best Hour of the Day, and which is the world's largest CrossFit business mentoring a company in the US. He is also a seasoned Naval Academy and Harvard Business School alumnus, and Jason has coached over 1,000 affiliate owners and has a very long-standing podcast show. Jason, I'd love to welcome you, man. And I want to hear all about your journey and what has made you do this. Sounds like you've had a very colorful journey so far. So welcome to the show, and really appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I don't take the opportunity to speak to other entrepreneurs or a captive audience generally lightly. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure having you here. I understand you're all about clarity and really, I'd imagine bring so much of the CrossFit world, which, there's an intensity of there, but also your Navy background. You must have such a rich and colorful journey that's added, so much value to entrepreneurs in your journey. So let's dig in.
Yeah, I mean, colorful is a good way to describe it. Where would you like to start? How about that?
Well, how about with who you are and why
Yeah.
you're doing what you're doing?
So yeah, my name is Jason Fernandez. Everybody calls me Fern. I born and raised Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My father's an immigrant from Cuba. Met my mother, and then they met in Florida, and then they moved to Louisiana, and both went to school there, college, and then I grew up there. Played athletics for all the way through high school. Ended up playing basketball at the Naval Academy. Transitioned out of active duty in 2015. Did a short stint in nonprofit space,
Okay.
but I had started my CrossFit affiliate, which I have owned for, I think we're going on 18 years, CrossFit Rife here in Virginia Beach, and then transitioned to that. And then about 5 years ago, actually almost 6 years ago, wow, one of my business partners and we started a podcast, which then accidentally turned into our consulting business about a year and a half later. And people ask me what I do, and I'm a teacher,
Mm,
effectively, but I do it specifically in the CrossFit space. So I do all things CrossFit. So I own my own affiliate. I've been working for CrossFit, kind of Inc. or HQ, as many people call it, for 13 years in the training department. And now mostly what I do is we're kind of their preferred partner for business development for CrossFit affiliates all over the globe, and we've worked with over a
amazing.
thousand of those. And really, my passion is really around trying to help people get access to good quality entrepreneurial training because, particularly in our space, almost nobody shows up to the table with any sort of business acumen, myself
Mm,
included, mind you. So I'm firmly in that camp. And I'm really passionate about helping that group because of the good that they do inside the walls of the gym,
mhm.
and it's really ignited my passion for learning. Has accelerated. I was not a great student all the way through college, and have really only gotten really into learning probably in the past 10 years. So
Okay.
that's the short bumper sticker version.
No, it's awesome, man. And I mean, there's so much gold to unpack there. It's true. So many entrepreneurs have a passion. They want to help people, whether it's, fitness is so important. And, CrossFit has definitely made its mark around the world. But a lot of people enter into the business game with so little training, so little awareness. I mean, there's so much when I open the doors of entrepreneurism, it's like, oh man, there's so much I don't know that I don't know. And so, having those kind of skills and those leaders, there to guide a CrossFit gym owner who's opening up to make their members successful, but also keep the business successful, because that's a big part of being able to serve. Is you have to have a business that's viable, right?
And that is what you just highlighted is probably one of the biggest disconnects that we see in our ecosystem, specifically in the CrossFit space. There's like two genesis stories for every CrossFit affiliate owner ever is that they they didn't know what else they wanted to do, so they opened a gym, or they were at a gym, they weren't happy with how it was going, so they went and opened their own. But that's
Okay.
about it, right? And it's very interesting. So when we think about how entrepreneurs are built in our space, they're built backwards effectively. So they start as an athlete, and then they might become a coach, and then
Hmm.
they'll become an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
instead of coming to the table and say, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. What market or space might I go to? And then start to niche down there. And I don't know that one is right or wrong. I just know that the way that we do it comes with a lot of struggle, because as you know, and as probably do many of your listeners, the learning curve in entrepreneurship, particularly depending on what market you're in, is incredibly high. Luckily, CrossFitters are tough, so we can survive a little bit longer, and
Yeah.
the cost of entry is low. But eventually, that check comes due, and my greatest nightmare is somebody who owns and operates an affiliate for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, and they get to the end of the road and they go to sell it and they come to realize it's not worth anything. And
Ye-
that is a really tough spot to be in for somebody who's put a lot of time,
Mhm.
effort, and money, more importantly, into that endeavor. So that's really why I'm passionate about it, because I
Okay.
see the gap. I've been in it so long, and it's really just something that I've become very, very obsessed with over the past 5 years.
Yeah, I can see that, and I love that you're starting with the beginning in mind too. A lot of entrepreneurs will start from a passion and they'll just think like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, but they're not really thinking about any kind of exit strategy,
Correct.
building the value of the asset of the business itself and having it as something that, can be perpetuated and maybe passed on. So that's amazing that you're bringing that kind of acumen into that space. I have friends who are in the CrossFit space.
Mhm.
I've never participated. I've always kind of done my own thing
Yep.
and been in holistic health. But I do know there's a strong community aspect to CrossFit. Can you
Huge,
talk a little bit
huge.
about that, Fern?
It probably gets overhyped a little bit, but it really is one of the unique components of the CrossFit space. There's no other fitness, and we don't have any beef with any other fitness kind of genres, if you will. I think if you're doing anything, I think that is a step in the right direction, and everybody's going to find their own path in there. But the short and sweet of it is, we should all eat a little bit better. We should all move a little bit more. How you do that is completely up to you.
Hmm.
I think you should go into your local CrossFit affiliate, but um, the when we think about, you mentioned starting with the end in mind, and when I talk about this, many affiliate owners have never even considered that. Some have been doing this for over a decade, and this becomes a very harsh reality for them.
Hmm.
And that's really tough because, number one, most CrossFit affiliate owners are broke. So to get to the end of the line, having been broke the entire time, and then get nothing on the way out the door, it can be really, really problematic. And it just doesn't need to be that way. But
Hmm.
what makes CrossFit unique is the community. So you're not going to find the culture/community that you're going to find in a CrossFit affiliate that you're going to anywhere else for the just I've never seen it. You're not going to find it at F45, Orange Theory, Barry's Boot Camp, any of those things. For instance, I have been the officiant for three different weddings for
Oh, that's
members at
amazing.
my gym. We have seen members go through multiple pregnancies during that time. I have one of my longest standing members. She's retired twice.
Mm.
So you really do get ingrained in a lot of these people's lives. A good CrossFit affiliate is a third place. So they've got work, they've got home, and then they've probably got the affiliate.
Okay.
And I am of the belief that personal connection is going to become more and more important as the world moves towards AI
For
and
sure.
people are seeking out personal connection. And it's really hard to get genuine personal connection, I believe. I think you can find it in a church if you go to a church, but many things get worked out during physical discomfort that are hard to get worked out any other way. And that's why I think
Yeah.
is so important about what we do inside of the affiliate. And it's hard. I think it's also hard these days to find a good community of like-minded people around just basic health initiatives and just living a overall healthy life. And I don't mean just exercising or eating. I mean getting outside, doing other things,
Mhm.
having a long conversation like this with somebody that is uninterrupted, like this. That's selfishly, that's one of the reasons we do the podcast. Like very
Yeah.
rarely do you get to talk to somebody for an hour uninterrupted. That's just not a thing in today's society.
Yeah. I hear you, man. I mean, that's been my experience with podcasting too, is like I've always enjoyed deep, deep conversations. I didn't realize for the majority of my life that I would be, I have a few terms for it now, like neuro spicy or neuro
Yeah, yeah.
advantaged. But
Yep.
I have a hard time with small talk. I
Yep.
love exploring deeper conversations, and I really believe that the human potential we have is so much more beyond what we've, even fathomed. I
Hmm.
remember being really inspired watching some of the CrossFit documentaries and just seeing the challenge that's involved because it's really a holistic sport. And
Oh
I'd
yeah.
love to invite you to maybe talk a little bit more about that. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering if that is part of the reason that really bonds and creates community, because you're going through, difficulty in all these fitness areas all in one place together. And there is this kind of, cohesion. And also there's a competitive aspect as
Hmm.
well, which forms teams and things, is my
Hmm.
understanding as well, right?
You're spot on all of that, and I think one of the things we did a first ever event called Affiliate Con in this past October, and it was it was all things CrossFit. And when I gave the opening keynote, one of the things I talked about is there's a unique thing that happens for people that go into a CrossFit gym and they decide to stay there, and it is simply this: they choose to do the hard thing if they come back the next day. I have never met in my entire CrossFit career, which is going on 20 years, and I have met conservatively probably 10,000 people in the space, traveling the world, doing this. Every single person that has ever done CrossFit has been humbled in some way, shape, or form. You're going to do something that you're not good at. Somebody that you don't think is fitter or stronger or faster than you is going to beat you. And there's a really interesting thing that happens there, or there's a really interesting component of humility that comes with
Mhm.
that, because everybody knows that everybody else went through the same thing. So you're
Mhm.
not going to find that at a Globo Gym. You're not going to find a scenario in a Globo Gym where, like, for a fact everybody kind of went through the same path.
Mhm.
But in a CrossFit gym, it's the same for everybody. Maybe the trajectories are a little steeper or a little faster, but for the most part, everybody has a very similar story. And I think that is the common bond of, hey, I chose to do the hard thing, which was come back tomorrow. And I think there's a deep respect for CrossFitters with regard to that singular decision. And I think it is the one thing that we all have in common. Whether I meet somebody in the airport or whether I meet them around the world, I know they made the same decision that I made. And I
Mhm.
think that's a really cool thing about it. And it doesn't even matter if you speak the same language or not. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know what you did. I know what you did. You've been doing this for 5 years. I know much about your story already. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And it's a really cool community. A very benevolent community, a very open community, and a very diverse community for that. I've met some of the coolest people, some of the smartest people, and the vast majority of my relationships can be tied directly back to that community. So.
That's amazing, man, and I appreciate you have a gift in articulating this kind of thing, and I like the distinction of like leaning into coming back tomorrow, because how many, when we talk about like mainstream fitness, it's all about like the hardest step is showing up to the gym, but when
Right.
you think about there's the after and then the continuation, I think that's a really important thing, right? Because that's, you don't just get fit and then, okay, I did it.
But no, yeah, it's never over. I mean, I was recently, last year wasn't a great year of being consistent training for me. I mean, I've trained my whole life since I was a little kid, but last year was very inconsistent. And I recently went on a trip down to Nashville to CrossFit Mayhem, which is kind of like a very well-known space in our industry. And I came back and I was like, I just need to get over it. I need to try, and I've not taken a day off since. Now that might be a little bit crazy, and I'm not saying I'm going, ridiculous when I train every single day, because I'm absolutely not. But I've now said there's no more days off, and I'm 45, right? So I'm not young. Um, but the when I talk to coaches and affiliate owners, one of the main points that I try to get across to them about, like, what is their role as a coach or an owner, and it is simply this, is to get that person to come back tomorrow. That's it. Because we know that if I come back tomorrow, I'm starting to build a habit. And if they miss a day, I'm starting to build a habit. Either way, I'm building a habit.
Yeah.
So really leaning into whatever I need to do for that person in that moment on that day is the right answer if it is anchored in the idea of getting them to come back tomorrow, which might mean, hey, like, you know what? Don't even worry about the workout today. Go sit on that bike, and I just want you to bike for 20 minutes. When your head's right, then I'll see you tomorrow, and that's it. And I think I've come full circle in this kind of industry where I was, I started in my late 20s when you have very different ideas about training than you do when you're mid 40s. So you start to see the writing on the wall about what is important and then what may be less important. And the most important thing is consistency, which is going to be comprised of many, 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 if not the majority of days being mediocre training days. And that's okay.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. It sounds like a lot of these lessons you've learned in the gym is really something that you can translate to helping the actual businesses become profitable,
Yeah.
and doing that. You talk about movement, like we often think of the brain as, the purpose of the brain is to think, but it's actually primarily related to moving the body, and people who are movers are generally more intelligent because you have a better frame of access with your body, whether it's better body awareness, or making better decisions of, nutrition or whatever. So I can see how so many of these, things that the CrossFit members are learning inside the gym can then be applied to entrepreneurial skills. So,
There are
so
so many things that carry over from fitness into business. It's really kind of wild. I've spent the last well, not that's more than that, but like the past 13 years teaching the methodology and the principles of CrossFit, and the number of those either mental models or principles that can be, really just kind of pancaked over and repurposed in business is absolutely astonishing. And it makes this really scary idea of entrepreneurialism much more digestible.
yeah,
Because being a business owner is just this big scary monster that means nothing but means everything all simultaneously. And if you can start to compartmentalize the ideas, then it becomes a bit easier to tackle. It's definitely not easy. But the cool thing is when there's so many CrossFit specific principles. So one of them is we want to be good at everything. Right? We don't necessarily want to be world class at anything. We want to be I would argue we want to be hyper competent at
Mhm.
most things,
Yeah,
which is the sign of a good business owner.
yeah,
A good business owner understands customer service, like they understand logistics, like they understand their financials, like they understand personal development. A really good one.
yeah,
So when we teach that, we say, listen, you can't just be good at one thing.
yeah.
Like you have to have a broad set of skills, and then you want to kind of slowly ratchet them all up over time. And then one day you'll get to the end of that and you'll be like, oh, I think I made a pretty good business here.
hmm Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I feel like there's this general trend towards more holism, whether
Hmm.
it's, I've met a lot of folks who are focused on stoicism. My background's
Yep.
in indigenous wellness, and this
Okay.
idea of being like a well-rounded human being is very important, right? Like
Hmm.
we're not meant to just be these singular focuses of specialization,
Hmm.
that we see, perpetuated in a lot of the mainstream Western society, like whether it's in the sciences or people become
Hmm.
so hyper focused. But I can't tell you Fern, how many times like working in events and working in community that I've like helped a doctor like install a projector because they didn't know how to use a
Right.
laptop,
Right.
like
Right.
yeah. So
It's a real thing. And I think, you see this also in youth sports now. And I am adamantly against it. And there's this really, and I mean really hard. So my kids are 11 and 6 at this point.
okay.
And you see this really hard push towards single sport focus almost immediately
Mhm.
in the youth sports space. And I'm not saying that eventually you're not going to pick a sport. So like I played 3 sports, the majority of my youth, but I only played one in college. And so at some point you're going to make a decision to put all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And what most parents don't understand is, yes, you can have some early progression if I do a singular focus on a sport, but what they will forfeit in overall athletic development, the understanding of being a good teammate, and then just the intelligence, both EQ and IQ of the sport. You can't be measured. I mean, you are putting kids so behind the 8 ball. And the other thing that nobody tells you is like a lot of college coaches and recruiters look for multi-sport athletes,
Okay.
not single
Makes
sport
sense.
athletes.
Makes sense, right?
And there's a ton of data to show that kids that are early bloomers in early sports are not going to be the ones that end up being the best performers later on down the road, because a lot of development happens in later ages anyway. particularly in boys. Girls are going to peak a little bit sooner, but boys specifically are going to be later, and and I just see that for a lot of parents. And like we put our kids in everything, they've not picked one that they like yet. And my wife played college softball and college volleyball as well. But whichever one they choose, that'll be the one that we go with. But
Yeah.
we told them like you guys are going to play a bunch of sports, but you're going to play stuff. You're not going to sit at home all day looking at your iPads because there's just so much that can be gained from. I like both individual and team sports, but I do think team sports have probably the most carryover into the
Mhm.
workplace.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's team development, there's cooperation, there's
Mhm.
also learning how to, see the bigger picture. I feel like
Yep.
in life we have finite games, whether
Hmm.
it's a CrossFit competition or, whatever kind of sport you're playing, but then there's the infinite game. And I can
Hmm.
see how being really well-rounded in a bunch of areas is so important. Like you need to, like we're meant to move, and we know there's an
Hmm.
epidemic, what they say, like sitting is the new smoking, right?
Oh yeah.
It's probably the old smoking. We're not
Yeah.
supposed to sit with our hips 90 degrees, all day
Yep.
long. And so I think it's awesome, man. And I really appreciate that you're, helping these gym owners become profitable, become successful. We're all meant to flourish and thrive together. And
Hmm.
it's true, there's these skill sets. So young people that are getting exposed to these gyms that have this kind of framework as well, they're being exposed to these business skills. I would imagine just through osmosis of being in these environments, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the idea. Your kids are going to model, so and whether it's your kids or your staff or even your clients, they're going to model. So like it would behoove us all if we gave them good positive things to model. And one of the things that most affiliate owners struggle with is I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's worth revisiting. Is this idea like they want to help people, which I don't think you get into this business if you don't want to help people, or you're definitely not going to be successful if you don't want to help people. But there does become a point when that can become detrimental. So there's like a couple of statements that you'll hear very often in the affiliate owner space, which is I'm not doing this for the money.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily doing it for the money either, but you do need money.
Yeah.
And it is as weird as it may sound, that can be a hard idea to rectify. They're like, I feel maybe greedy taking money or charging more money. And getting people over that idea
Mhm.
is a really big hurdle, which is, hey, listen, you shouldn't be upset about, having some degree of a transactional relationship as long as it's a fair and in a value, rooted transaction. If you're ripping people off, well, then I think you should have a problem with it. But if you're not, then I think you should grow a great business and I think you should serve more people and you should give more people an opportunity to enter that workspace, either working for you or maybe buying you out one day. But that's a big one. It's just like there's a certain level of selfishness that I think is required for somebody to be selfless.
Mhm.
That's what's the saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. And I think a lot of our entrepreneurs fall prey to this, not just in our industry, but just saying like, hey, listen, like you do need to take care of yourself. One of our business coaches, Joel, he specifically specializes in mindset for affiliate owners, but he has a saying which is better me, better everybody.
Yeah.
And it's both a selfish statement and a selfless statement simultaneously,
Mhm.
and trying to root people into that, which is like, hey, the best version of your team is entirely rooted in being anchored to the best version of you. So make
Yeah.
that one, and then you can serve everybody else more effectively.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, it is true. This is a common trope and a challenge for most entrepreneurs. And, even for us, it's been because, we have this higher mission of, creating our acronym for home. We want to see everyone thrive at home, but home
Mhm.
is heaven on Mother Earth. And what is heaven? To me, it's a state of consciousness
Right.
of being aligned to that creative source of power that is all fitness. It is all wealth. It is all health. And we've been so conditioned. Part of why we started education association, Fern, is because we know that a lot of our beliefs come from these institutionalized systems that
Hmm.
have put on us, like it's wrong to think for yourself. Like there's a reason why school doesn't teach us about finances and money because
Oh, listen, don't get me started.
and this is the thing, right? Because we know the root of the industrial age created these systems to condition us
Hmm.
to be subservient. And when we come into our mastery, and from what listening to you, and talking about this well-rounded, holistic community development and developing those around you, I don't even see that as selfish, so to speak. I see that as being an uplifter of consciousness. And when we do that within ourselves and we raise our standards to being a higher vision and version of ourselves, well, that's going to ignite in the other people too. So whether you're doing like, I don't know, you guys are probably doing like 50 muscle ups really fast or something like crazy. You're like, holy, that guy's,
Yeah.
you're
Well, yeah, and I
igniting the
think that's
possibility.
yeah, and I think it speaks to your point, which is part of being selfish, and I use the term selfish very loosely, but that
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I hear you, man.
that's the feeling that people associate with it. I don't think that is selfish at all. I think it is the optimal way to live so that I can create a good example for another gym owner or
Yeah.
one of my coaches that works for me at the gym or my kids in that example. So they say, okay, well, for instance, like, oh, like my dad was in shape for a really long time. Like, that's what I want my kids to think. Like he was never not in shape. Like he never,
Yeah.
wouldn't wrestle with us or wouldn't go outside.
Yeah.
He always had energy. So like, these are the things that I think about, which is like I want my kids to associate me
Mhm.
with those things. I will definitely mess things up and have messed things up, and there'll for sure be some things they resent me for, but I'm going to try to make the majority of them good.
Yeah.
And to your point about finances, financial literacy, I believe that the numbers are really depressing. Actually, there's less than I want to say 18% of entrepreneurs would rate themselves as financially literate,
Hmm. Wow.
and you know, I don't, the numbers on, Americans at least, that budget is also super atrocious. So most of them don't have more than $400 in the bank. And some people might think this is, calling people out. It's not calling people out. That is, if we really think about the way the financial system is built, the way the education system is built, that's the only logical outcome that you would expect,
Mhm.
is that people don't understand how the banking system works. They don't
Yeah.
understand how interest works. They don't understand how lending works.
Mhm.
They don't understand how anything works. And one of the things I like to tell, at least the gym owners that we work with, is there will come a point when they're wrestling with something like finances, whether it's getting understanding their cash flow and getting a business budget in place, or they're starting to build leverages. They'll say, "I should have, man, I really should have known that." And my response is, "Why should you have known that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Nobody ever taught you that."
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a saying, don't shoot on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Yeah, yeah, if nobody ever taught you that, why would you know that?
Right.
Right?
Right.
So just compartmentalize it for now and then move on, but there is no reason that you should have known that. Like
Mhm.
that makes no sense whatsoever. But now what do we do? Okay, I need to know that. I
Mhm.
can learn that. I will learn that so that I do know it. And that's how you kind of transition that mindset from I should have known this, which is very, blame centric, to relieving yourself of that blame and then putting the power back in your hands and saying, well, okay, well, I don't know that, but I can do something about that. And now the
Totally.
decision is either do it or don't.
Yeah.
But the first is getting past the first part, which is I should have known that. I was like, no, you should. They don't teach us anything about finances in school ever.
Yeah.
And the only time I really dove into finances, even accounting in college at the Naval Academy, it's pointless and has no relevance to you when you're 22. Like, you have no reference point for it. You don't know why it's relevant. The IRS says that I have to do accounting, but that's about it. The only time I really started diving in was later on in life. I don't think I started really diving into finance and budgeting until I was almost 40.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it is a big challenge. And one of the words you use to describe your dad, being energetic, having
Hmm.
energy, it really, I mean, money is essentially that. And it's the connections. If we think all the exchanges that are happening in
Hmm.
human civilization at all points of time, it is a source of energy. And if anything,
Hmm.
I feel like we've gone through this collective forgetting of who we
Hmm.
really are. And it translates. It's not just about finances. It's how we're showing up energetically first thing when we rise in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we're showing up with our children. Are we present, or is our energy focused on our worries about our tasks, or are we on
Mm-hmm.
our devices? Like, we haven't really created a culture that really focuses on the mastery of our
Mm-hmm.
attention, which is the greatest source of energy, right? So people are just not putting attention on their budget, their finances, and all these things. So when we do get into a situation where we want to grow a business, it's like we're starting from a pretty low bar. A lot of
Oh,
us.
well, not even that, not just that. We're starting from a low bar, and then we have to compete with this ever increasing world that is entirely designed to steal our attention.
Yeah.
If you think about, going away from, you could use a very simple example between, because you're probably around my age, when you used to watch TV, there was commercials. There was a natural break in there. Oh, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
talk to somebody. I don't care about this commercial or whatever.
Yeah.
But now Netflix, after about 10 hours, will be like, hey, are you still watching? Do you want to continue going through this 20-hour series of this show? And everything is built on streaming. Everything
Totally.
is built on maximum engagement with a platform. And I've been looking at like just getting a flip phone and just going back to like an old flip phone so that I cannot carry work around with me,
Yeah.
because I have multiple businesses. And I'm aware of that. My wife and I have already decided like our kids are not going to they'll have a phone, but they won't have a smartphone for a while.
Yeah.
And we'll probably have, even when they do get phones, they probably won't have their own phones. We'll probably have a house phone that they can borrow when they leave.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, man. And I think there's a big paradigm shift, and people are realizing the importance of our attention and having singular focus, having the energy to just enjoy life. Like we live in this much more interconnected world in terms of that access to things. I mean, we're
Hmm.
having a beautiful conversation. You're in Virginia, I'm here in Ottawa, Canada right now.
Hmm.
It's this. And yet that real heart connection with humans is what everyone is seeking. They're seeking community. So I'm
Hmm.
glad that CrossFit is filling this, especially around fitness. Because
Hmm.
you can have a passion around like comic books or something like that, but it's not really necessarily bringing that whole self
Yeah,
to
I
community.
think there's a lot of benefit to escapism and things of that nature. But if everything is centered around escapism, then I think it is massively detrimental. And listen, we could be to some degree. CrossFit is escapism. Like it's hard to think about anything else when your heart
Yeah.
rate is at 160 and you can't breathe. That is a form of escapism. And listen, it's no secret either that many people use fitness as a kind of like as a crutch and a drug in some sense to get away. So we're not immune to that, but
Mhm.
at least it's some sort of a healthy version of that. But anything can be done in an unhealthy fashion. But yeah, I
Great
think
point.
I just love being at the gym every day because I get to see people and I get to talk to people,
Yeah.
check in on how they're doing. And there's also very interesting conversations that you have or interactions when somebody has just done something very challenging physically, right?
Mhm.
Most of the walls come down.
Yeah.
They will say things that they would not otherwise say. They will react differently. And we're in a unique scenario where we get to see that on a daily basis. And I think that also has to do with why the culture and the community inside the CrossFit affiliates is so strong, is because there's a level of vulnerability inside of the
Yeah.
affiliate because everybody goes through it. Like when you're just done, you're done. And there's no room for BS at that point. Like you're not going to fake anything. If somebody's just like, how you feel? Like, I feel terrible, right? Like that was awful. But you're never going to get that reaction in a coffee store.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everybody's going to lie all the
Yeah.
time. How you
Yeah.
doing? Oh, pretty good. Meaning they're bankrupt or the business is going under or they're getting divorced, but they're like, oh, pretty good, right? So it's like it's a really good equalizer in that sense,
I love
where
that,
we
man.
get to see like what's really going on with the person behind the person.
Yeah, that authenticity and vulnerability are really the backbone of true collaboration and co-creation. And I
Hmm.
believe that collaboration, co-creation is the real currency when we talk about
I
money,
love it.
even like this is the currency of the new age that we are all yearning for. It isn't
Yeah.
about separation and hiding and wearing masks. It's about
Hmm.
being real. Like that's what we
Right.
want. Well, we want realness from
Yeah.
one another. Man, you've
Yeah.
inspired me to check out because I was going to a really good gym when I was working at the college. It's called the Arc and just had everything there. And I was
Yeah.
meeting people and then, taking the entrepreneurial path, shifting. Now I've been going to a different, like low standard gym
Yep.
and just doing my own thing. And I feel
Yep.
like that's the missing piece for me. So I'm going to check out what's in town here. You got me inspired
Do
to
this. You can send me a list of them. I know tons and tons of people in Ottawa. I believe NCR is in Ottawa. They have a
sounds
fantastic
familiar.
gym. They have a fantastic gym. I've known those guys forever. But yeah, I just think, you know, obviously health and fitness is one thing, but I think health, fitness, and community is a much more impactful
Yeah.
combination. And I
Yeah.
think that's what the beauty of what comes with CrossFit, and that's why I'm so passionate about it because the people that choose to take on that endeavor are, and they're taking on a lot of liability, a lot of risk, and I want to make sure that they have
Mm.
a successful path forward in that because the outcome of that will only be that they help more people, and there's no shortage of people that need better health and fitness.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of a really robust community, you can't have that without health and fitness. It's interesting too. You may not be aware of this, Fern, but our Lightheart Vision is founded on the principles that are present in the Christ letters, and
Okay.
they're not. It's not. We're not a religious organization at all,
Right.
but it's really the real spirituality behind Christ consciousness.
Hmm.
And what keeps coming to mind, there's a couple things. He talks about how the nature of divine consciousness is fitness, it is health. And when we think of divine consciousness, it's like it wants us to be fit and healthy and
Hmm.
wealthy. It's not like, the only barrier is between us and it is our willingness to participate in pushing those boundaries and really seeing what we're
Hmm.
possible and we're capable of. I mean, if anything, that's what Christ demonstrated. He's like,
Hmm.
you folks you're capable of way more than you think you are,
Hmm.
and I feel like when we're doing it in the spirit of community, I like looking at the root word of the root word
Like etymology. Yeah.
etymology.
Yep.
My words are all scrambled today. But
Yeah.
anyways, it's really about communicating our unity, realizing that we are connected to something greater. Whether you want to look at it just practically, we're connected to Mother Earth. We all, like you said, we have these paths that interconnect, and in CrossFit,
Hmm.
it sounds like there's similar paths. So
Hmm.
there's a level of understanding the basic equality that we have on a level of beingness, and then doing something phenomenal and challenging together.
Hmm.
I mean, I think when I think of CrossFit, I think you folks have elevated the bar in terms of showing what's possible to the world in
Hmm.
terms of athleticism, like
Hmm.
having these really well-rounded athletes that are like running, marathons and swimming and then doing all these lifting competitions and
Hmm.
doing the ropes and like it's pretty amazing. And I feel like humanity, if anything, is always pushing this boundary. So what's unique about you folks is you're doing it in community with each other.
Hmm.
It's not just the individual doing it, right?
Yeah, well, it's not even fun if you do it by yourself. We're going to be really
Yeah.
honest. And the longer I've been in this space and having gone through different components like the Naval Academy, being in the military for a long time and now being in this space is that I think a lot of the answers or even maybe internal discussions that a lot of us are searching for are really found through physical discomfort. I have a friend and kind of a mentor, Brian Shantosh. He runs a organization called Big Fish, and a lot of them are centered around a lot of things that he does are centered around physical activity. So he does 24-hour events, 30-hour events, and he himself has done way crazier stuff like that. But he does them this way because at some point mentally you're going to break and you're just going to open up.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
where you can have like the real discussion that you're avoiding.
Hmm.
There's just something that happens at 3 a.m. in the morning when you've been awake for 18 hours, when you're just physically exhausted, where there's just no more barrier anymore. It's just gone. Like
Yeah.
you're just going to talk about the thing that you've been wanting to talk about. If somebody can kind of pinpoint it and ask you the right question, and then it just comes out. And again, I think there's a lot to be had in the physical realm because I do think ultimately it unlocks the psychological realm
Mhm.
and probably even the spiritual realm at
I would
some
say so,
you
man.
know, you
I,
know.
I I
So
I think that spiritual enlightenment is not this, thing on high ephemeral. It's actually an embodiment process of bringing
mhm,
a higher level of consciousness into the body.
mhm.
That's what my spirit name actually means as Ondakin. It refers to being a steward of the land. And
Okay.
and I believe that it's even like we have the scientific nomenclature nowadays to talk about these things like we actually raise biophotonic density. We can actually radiate more light in the body the more that we, you know, like breath work is a good example
Mhm.
of that. But high levels of fitness, if you just think of like pure movement, you're
Right.
vibrating at a higher frequency. So when
Right.
I like to see our species, like human beings, as kind of like caterpillars, and we're
Okay.
preparing for another expression. But a caterpillar has to go through that
Right.
uncomfortableness of the cocoon to really
Mhm.
emerge as a higher version of itself. And I like what you're talking about going through those barriers and crossing some of those things where the veils are lifted and you're like all you're left with is what's real, right? When you've passed some of those things that have been holding your limiting beliefs inside the frame.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I think more people should be honest about trials and tribulations, particularly in the world of today and, the hustle porn and all the like it just everybody's like Instagram is just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about the good stuff. And I think not that you want to be doom and gloom, but I've always been a fan of like just tell the truth. If something
Yeah.
is bad, say it's bad. Don't
Yeah.
beat around the bush. I had a call with a gym owner. I mean, I've called lots of calls with gym owners, but I remember one specifically where newer gym owner had just quit his job. He was a teacher, going him and his wife. They're like, "Hey, we really need to chat with you. We have some questions." And he's like, he said, "I just have a question. Like, is it supposed to be this hard?"
Mm.
And I said, "Yes." And it sounds weird, but that's all he needed. Like the
Yeah.
relief that he
Yeah. Yeah.
felt by me just saying, like, "Oh yeah, this is how it is. This is the hard part."
Mhm.
If I were to tell you anything else, I would be lying to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think about that a lot. Like he was so relieved because he thought he was like, I'm weird. I'm struggling here,
Yeah.
and I should not be. Again, shooting on yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is not how it's supposed to be. And I said, oh no, this is exactly how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there will be varying degrees of this pressure that you feel.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody, whether it's an entrepreneur or just, I don't know, that was just worth talking to at all, that didn't have some significant heart. Some of the most interesting people in my life are some people that have some of the craziest, most wild trials and tribulations
Yeah.
that have made them who they are.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot we're in this weird state where everybody wants to avoid failure and everybody wants to avoid
Hmm. Hmm.
hardship. And I'm not saying that we should, necessarily seek it out per se, but sometimes you should.
Yeah.
But I think we should just be more honest. Hey, whatever you're looking for is probably on the other side of something difficult.
Yeah. Well, we got to face the fears, right? This acronym came to me years ago is feel everything and remember. And what you're remembering, who you're remembering, like
Hmm.
I think that's the journey that you can't put into words, but I
Hmm.
totally agree with me, man. I've had, I mean, entrepreneurship has been one of the most difficult things, but what led to it, there's some heart-wrenching stuff. And the thing is, I feel like all of this is a gift. Tony Robbins talks about like life
Hmm.
is for us, and I think that when you're huffing and puffing, you don't have your breath. And like I actually amazed myself. I earlier this spring, I just said I'm gonna run. I go out really early in the mornings
Hmm.
often, and there's like a calisthenics park, and I'm like I'm just gonna run the whole distance. And then there's
Hmm.
this big hill in the Terry Fox Park
Hmm.
here, and I'm like, and I got to the end, and I'm like, okay, normally I would like stop and then I'm just gonna sprint up the hill after this 10K run without stopping. And I was so surprised because I had more energy doing that. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, like I was so used to like, huffing and puffing up the hill. I'm like, how do I have more energy after running 10K and then sprinting up a hill? I couldn't believe it. So it really made me look at some of my paradigms I've been carrying. Is like,
Hmm.
where have I been getting in my own way of, blocking myself from a greater expression of fitness?
Well, if you think about what you just described there life is hard in every way imaginable. It would be hard to express that idea in and of itself. But this idea of being tough, right? Like however anybody interprets that, I think very few people, like there are some, are just born tough.
Yeah.
I think the rest of it is made, and come to think about it, how do you learn to deal with hard thing is relative, like
Yeah.
I think Joe Rogan says like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Exactly.
So that means this is a wild scale that we're talking about. Somebody like me spent time in the military, lost friends at an early age. Like my definition of tough is going to be different than somebody who's never really had to deal with any hardship and never been in the workforce or something like that. And that's not me looking down on them. It's just like I look at challenges differently. I'm like, oh, I've done this before. And I
Yeah.
think fitness is your first opportunity, and it's completely controlled for you to do hard things, right? Because again, hard is relative. Like what's hard from a fitness standpoint is going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But when you do something hard, you're like, okay, well, now I've proven to myself I can do that. So then when I go to the office and I'm mad at my boss, or there's a problem that walks into my office that I'm struggling with, I'm like, okay, this is hard. Just like the gym is hard. It's the same mental process, which is like, okay, one rep at a time, just like it's going to be one problem set at a time in the office. That's a trained behavior. And it's also something that you can have a tremendous amount of, like it atrophies as well. Like mental toughness goes away over time. Like
Yep.
we get soft, all of us.
Yep.
So that's why I think it's important to reintroduce yourself to do tough things because you're going to have to do that in life, whether it's the loss of a family member or something unexpected happens. Like all of these things are tough. And I think we're all just better equipped to deal with them if we're just constantly teaching ourselves to do hard things. And that doesn't mean you have to go run an ultra marathon, right? But it might mean you don't take a day off today from training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it might mean that you maybe go to bed earlier when you don't want to. That doesn't sound like being tough, but like we all know, like that's a lot harder than it sounds, right? But simply making that decision, and then what happens is over time, if you make the decisions over and over and over again, that toughness turns into discipline, which is ultimately what we're all chasing, whether it's psychological discipline, spiritual discipline, physical discipline. I always tell people, food, fitness, and finances, they're all behavior based.
Yeah.
And that in order to get good at those, it's reps. It's reps and discipline for all of them. That is the answer, largely. And I think the easiest way to start to strengthen that muscle is through some degree of fitness. Whether you go to a CrossFit gym or you go run, a 10K and sprint up a hill, it's the same outcome.
Yeah. And one way has more fun. And I think, it's what you're pointing at too, is that through that discipline, there's liberation, there's freedom. A lot of people think freedom is just, doing what you want, but without the structure of having that your own mastery is another way for the discipline. You're not going to have real freedom in life. So you have to face those elements, right?
Well, if you think about what everybody wants, they want to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, right? Like if we're to freedom, that's probably a very loose, bad definition of it. But if you want to be able to do that, we could make some assumptions about your finances, about your intelligence, about your relationships, at which point you're not going to master any of those things without hard work. Like it's just not going to be a thing. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, then if I want to be able to have time freedom, okay, well, then I'm going to need to be disciplined about my finances and about how I schedule, right? If I want to have, family freedom, well, then we're going to need to talk about how we structure our day and what we do with our kids and what my wife and I do and don't do, right? It's all going to come back to like these little micro decisions made on a daily basis.
Totally. 100%, man. My mind has been screaming at me to tell you. I don't know if you're aware of. We mentioned social media and all the distractions and looking for that authenticity. I got to tell you, for the first time this year, just maybe 3 years ago or 3 months ago, pardon me, my words are scrambled today. I discovered a place where I found that there really is authentic engagement. Have you been on School before? SKOOL?
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with Alex Hormozy and that platform.
Exactly.
I'm in multiple groups in there.
Okay.
Some for marketing, some for AI, some for gym owners.
Amazing. Well, I'd love to connect with you on there, Fern.
Yeah. We know I'm in there. I'm in there for a bunch of different stuff because I follow a bunch of different people they're all very topic specific in there. But yeah, fantastic platform.
Yeah, you talk about this new age, like people are yearning for that authentic and vulnerable connection, and I feel like we're entering in a new paradigm. And I really appreciate like the work that Alex is doing in school. I've
Mhm.
actually had freaking four dreams with that guy coming in my dreams, and I feel like he's teaching me. So when I first read your bio, I'm like, man, I gotta talk to him about Alex because I feel like I thought you would be aware of his work because he
Yeah, I
helps
mean, well,
gym
he was in our
owners and
space before he was doing what he's doing,
okay,
and I've been out to myself and my partners have been out to acquisition.com 4 or 5 times
amazing,
to
amazing.
interact with him and his team. I think they're teaching some really cool stuff, and a lot of people in the fitness industry don't like him. I admittedly didn't like him many years ago as well. I didn't really understand him or what was going on at the time. That was my own ignorance. Um, but incredibly intelligent. Talk about somebody who's disciplined,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
100%. Yeah.
So, and you'd be hard to convince me that he's not the goat of sales at this point. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody else that like when he did that book launch, he sold.
Over 100 million,
Man,
100.6 or 106 million or something like that.
that's
Yeah, he
wild.
broke a world record.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something happening I can feel in the undercurrent, and Sam
Mhm.
Ovens is another real, like he seems like a heart-centered entrepreneur
Mhm.
who has something to gift to our society. I feel like it's what we always wanted the internet to be. Not that that's
Yeah, yeah,
end all
yeah.
be all, because we're not
Yep.
just meant to be online. We're supposed to be doing, like you said, the hard things.
Right.
But when I think of like nature and life, like nature is always doing the hard things. The work
Mhm.
that's happening on a cellular level, on a like a mycelial net like level, like there's all this work that's happening, and we've been conditioned to think that work is something you do 9 to 5, and you shouldn't even really like it. And so,
Right.
I like that you're breaking these bubbles, man, and
Yeah,
being
there's oh man, we probably couldn't parse this out today, but there's a difference. I think there's a delineation between work and labor, right? So like going into the workforce by definition, but really that's like labor. Like we're trading
Mhm.
labor for money in that
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah,
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think men specifically, but like we get meaning out of having something
sure,
meaningful to do.
yeah.
And I think for that could be a cobbler or an accountant. Like I don't know that matters. But that's not the only thing, right? We want to make sure that we have a balance. It's like, hey, yes, I'm going to need to work in order to make a living. I would just prefer that I'm passionate about the living. I would prefer that I enjoy it.
Mhm.
Right. So this is an interesting concept. Like I was at a workshop and somebody's like, how would you define a successful affiliate? Nobody ever likes to talk about money. So let's talk about it differently and say, okay, well, number one, I would like to wake up every morning and have meaning, right? Number two, I would like that meaning to make a difference in the world, to my family, to the
Mhm.
to the people on my team, and to people that I serve inside of the gym. And then if I'm doing both of those things, like I should be capable of building a life around that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's what success is. I want to wake up every morning. I want to have meaning. I want that meaning to make a difference. And if I'm doing that properly, I should be able to build a really great life around that. And that's what I think a successful affiliate is. Someone who accomplishes all three of those, because that means everybody in that ecosystem, all the stakeholders are getting what they need out of that. And I think we don't really think about like, what does success mean? Because once you can anchor your daily behaviors in that, you start looking at your time differently. You start looking at your friends differently. You start looking at
Yeah.
everything differently. Hey, is this person getting me to where I want to go or not? And if they're not, well, then I should probably just move on from that relationship. Maybe it served its purpose, but it's no longer serving me anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, you've articulated that really well, Fern. Like, I appreciate you having such a holistic view of things and really piecing together all these elements. They all fit to making a whole,
Mhm.
well aligned human being. A real steward of what it means to be just a good man or woman. In the world. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's when I'm dead and gone, that's really the only kind of thing I'm gonna really want to be able to answer is like, was I a good person? Was I a good man? Was I a good dad? And if the answer is yes to those, then I'll be happy with everything.
Well, that's a powerful legacy to leave, man. And actually leads me right to the question I love to ask our guests before we wrap up here is, if you had a megaphone and you could talk to the whole world all at once and everyone could hear you, what would you like to say?
Oh, That's a tough one. You stumped me here. Usually not a man with no words.
I can tell.
Yeah. I think I think what I would say is there's I think there's a misunderstanding about, and this is me speaking now, I may change my mind, but misunderstanding about life. I think life is supposed to be hard. And I think hard is okay. But I think if you're pursuing something that you are initially passionate about, which then you can develop mastery, which you've mentioned many, many times, then I think you can live a fulfilled life.
Mm.
Because I think people confuse passion with mastery. You become passionate about something after you master it,
Mm.
not
Interesting
prior
perspective.
to. Because you really become passionate about something when you're really good at it, not when you're terrible at it.
Mm.
So that means I have to chase mastery first, and then by default, I am passionate about it. I've been through that with basketball, in the military and now in business, which is like I chase mastery, and then therefore it becomes fun for me.
Mm.
At which point, it's really hard to beat anybody or find anybody that's gonna be unhappy or not giving a tremendous amount of value to the people around them if what they're doing looks like play.
Yeah.
So whether it's you teaching business or you're making pizzas, if you become a master at it, it probably feels like play to you. So find something and get really good at it and get so good at it that it feels like play, at which point you'll be happier and so will probably everybody else that's around you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You reminded me of one of the people I look up to. He's a teacher of the medicine wheel, and he wrote a book called Reclaiming Our Youth. And the way he uses the medicine wheel, he talks about the entrance door is belonging. And that's the eastern door where a
Mhm.
lodges you would have set.
Okay.
And then underneath that, when you move into the southern door, it's mastery first. And then once you have mastery, you can move into independence, which allows you to be interdependent. And then after that, so that's the fun, having fun.
Yeah.
After that, it moves into the cycle, the senior cycle of generosity, where you can give back to the people around you. You can teach from that place, and then keep that cycle of belonging going. But mastery really is the next step after someone feels they belong in an area. So
Yeah.
I really like your message. It's
That's cool.
powerful.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, including where we can find you? And yeah, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, number one, thank you for having me. I always appreciate it. You can find me on all the social media platforms as Coach J Fern on Instagram. Best hour of their day everywhere. Besthouroftheirday.com, on YouTube, on Instagram. We've had over 800 podcasts on there. Very much singularly focused on the CrossFit space. Being an athlete, being a coach, being an owner. But it's really all kind of the same thing. So. And then, yes, if you're interested, don't be afraid of CrossFit. Go find your local CrossFit affiliate, and I assure you that it will be one of the better decisions you've ever made.
That's amazing, man. I really appreciate your presence. I really appreciate who you are as a communicator, as an athlete, and as an entrepreneur, helping so many other entrepreneurs, find a viable and uplifting community space that they help other people, man. It's like I see that as a real self-perpetuating gift that you're giving the world. So keep it up,
Well,
brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to invite our daughter Luciana to say to everyone, thanks for watching. So I'm just going to pull up my screen here, and thanks to all our listeners for joining today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Fern. Thanks again. Blessings to you and all your
Yeah,
family.
thank you. I appreciate it.
The moon is right, the spirit's up. We're here tonight, and that's enough. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The party's on, the feeling's here.
We wish you a
Have a new year. Have a new year.
Happy New Year! Can you say Merry Christmas, everybody?
Yeah.
Say it.
Have a new year.